So something quick that I wanted to run by you guys in reference to the upcoming Semicombatant video. I didn't really want to make into a series, but I feel like there has to be a little meta discussion surrounding it. So right now, I'm in the Valheim suggestions discussions pins. I've zoomed in onto this pinned message in particular so that we can look at this baseline rule. We will almost never add something that only works in multiplayer and not single player. Example, rowing boats for more speed. Which is interesting because only works and rowing boats for more speed is not something that has to that doesn't follow. So if you can get off of your boat while it's still moving to shoot a serpent or harpoon a serpent, or you can get up off your boat to fish, cast a line, then you can also get up off of the rudder and row for additional speed. So kind of doesn't make any sense. Kind of not the best example. But how this relates to like weapon analysis and combat analysis is there are quite a bit of builds and weapons that are particularly good in multiplayer. Like they provide a benefit in multiplayer that does not exist in single player. That would be a lot of DPS and damaged focused builds. So sword build, flesh rippers, spears, knives, even battle axe, crystal battle axe. Uh, yeah, all of these are far more convenient and they work far better in multiplayer rather than single player because you can have somebody playing with a more control based build, focusing on the enemies, getting the debuff on the enemies, and then your friend can just go to town with DPS. And it's more effective than just having one or the other, and it costs roughly the same amount of materials. So it's the same thing, but you get advantage. You get better damage, better enemies, or more enemies being destroyed at a higher rate than you do otherwise. Far more than single player. It is far more effective than solo. So here we have something that is more effective, that exists primarily to this effect in multiplayer and not solo. To which I have to wonder, are all of these multiplayer builds going to change in the future? Are they going to be buffed in order to be solo viable compared to just running Holy Trinity of Boat gear and Frostner and Parry Shield that comes along with that? Is the standard clubs, bows, polearms going to change? It could. It could. But there has to be a lot of work being put into that to make that happen. And then my question I have to ask y'all is, would you even want that? Now, personally, I'm all for having proper weapon balance, but if every single weapon of like a standard weapon type is perfectly balanced, then you would just go for the cheaper option 100% of the time. In which case, they wouldn't really be balanced. So if spears were just as viable in about every situation as like clubs, then everybody would just be running spears because they cost way less. And this is where we get semi-combatants in because the balance around weapons that cost significantly less and weapons that cost more is that the weapons that cost more are almost always going to be better in combat than the weapons that cost less. It's a balance between the competency and the cost. And what happens is, if you get a big group of multiplayer, you have some people that want to stay in the base for the most of the time, some people who want to stay in the base all of the time, and these people who want to stay in the base most of the time, they're going to have their favorite area of combat that they want to fight in, and so they'll pick up weapons that are cheaper but can get the job done, that can put them in a viable, workable position in maybe boss fights or dungeons or villages, fulling camps, unique combat scenarios. And that kind of disappears if everybody has balanced gear. It's just like everybody's just making the same thing. And then nobody ever gets like leftover gear as much. Like nobody gets pushed outside of their comfort zone. It's like, okay, well, I wanna join this raid with you. Okay, you can pick up my leftover spear. Okay, well, it's like this the spear, right? It's like I already have a spear. That's what I already have. I have the current tier spear. Instead of saying, oh, I'm a spear main semi-combatant, I have your leftover shield, or I have the shields, so maybe like a silver shield and fang spear. Those are both relatively cheap. Okay, I'll pick up your leftover iron at gear and we can go take out this fulling camp. It's like, if the weapons were all balanced, or more focused on solo, so that it wouldn't add any aspects to multiplayer, then there would be no leftover at gear. Everybody would just have spears. And then it would just cheapen the variety at the end of the day. So, I don't think following this to even the almost never, I don't think they even do that. I also don't think that they should do that. I think that having a group of weapons that are good and optimal for combat, and then a group of cheaper weapons that people can choose to save time on, maybe if they're not terribly into combat, that's a good idea. I like that. But you have to admit that that provides a benefit, especially for things like the DPS weapons, a lot of them that do cost less. That provides a benefit in multiplayer that solo does not have. Somebody a few weeks ago was on the Valheim Discord talking about how they were Flesh Ripper main fighting Modair with a friend, and the friend took aggro, and the Flesh Ripper main just shredded through Modair, and it's like, yeah, I can understand why. That's a really good DPS weapon boss killer, provided you have the skills for it. It is the really good DPS, a single target weapon. But DPS is not very good in solo play, so this is an advantage that does not exist. And okay, I'm going to say it one more time. Should we follow this principle going forward, or should we not? Should we balance weapons so that this is true, or should we keep multiplayer optimal weapons, semi-combatant weapons, and truly optimal solo weapons and beyond different and viable in their own ways? I'm not decided. I don't have to follow this framework. I'll do. I'm not a I'm not a dev. I'll do whatever optimal that happens, and then I'll do analysis on everything else that comes along as well. Whatever they decide to do in the game is doesn't make too much of a difference to me, as long as they keep making cool control weapons in the future, like Frostners and the Atgear and all of that. But yeah, let me know what you think. Next video is the Semicombatant video properly, and I will see you guys some other time. Bye!